Spinster here. Welcome to my channel. Thanks for joining me today. I do have my new setup for the camera and it is much steadier. I can see completely what you are seeing, which is a new one for me. So hopefully I will do less of pulling off camera when I'm demonstrating something. Before I get started on what we're going to be doing today, I wanted to give a shout out to all of you who comment and make suggestions in the comment section. I appreciate that a lot, I really do. And I also want to thank Ragtop, who alerted me to Fabric Stash has 3 different widths of black and white stripes available from Riley Blank, 1/8, 1/4, and 1/2 inch stripes. So I had to bound off and order some of that. So thank you, Ragtop. I did order some and I think they've been shipped actually. So I will share those with you when I get them. I also wanted to share, I went to the Acme Quilt and Fabric Company in Blair, Nebraska to pick up some fabric because, you know, I don't have enough already. So I got some black and whites, which are kind of fun. I just love these that have little bits of color in them because black and white and bright, gotta love it. So lots more black and white. Because I bought this one again. I know I have it already, but I bought this one again just because it's got that pop of color in there too. And then I also, toss those aside for the moment, picked up some more, excuse me, I think all of these are Tula Pink. Most of them are anyway. I know those are. I think these are, I'm not sure. Someone will tell me. And so more brights. And these stripes and dots are mostly for the, sorry, I'm going over to get a braid. So those are mostly for this. And I have, I think, enough of this. This is from actually me and my sisters from their Halloween collection. And I went back to see if I could get more of it at Mangelson's and they didn't have any more. So whatever, the quilt is going to be whatever size this allows. That will be the limiting factor. All right, so anyway, that's my haul. Thank you to the ladies at Acme Quilt. All right, now for today. I have had one of those weeks where I wake up at 3:30 in the morning and that's it. I'm done sleeping. I'm tired, but I'm finished sleeping. So I have been doing more of my bedside table sketchbook and the challenge when I can't sleep to just get up and design quilts. So what I am thinking about doing today is this, which I think I dreamed up on Tuesday night, early Wednesday, I don't know, whenever. And I think it could just be a lot of fun. Now it looks, I don't know, kind of a cross between Dr. Seuss and something that I used to do with Zentangle. This is sort of something I would do, but I want to do it in, of course, black and white and bright colors and prints, solids, and I'm going to give some prints. Now we got lots of options here. We could, of course, make these curved or straight. They could be black and white stripes or black and white prints with brights here. These could be the brights and these the black and white prints. We could do something really wild and have a light black and white print, say something like this as the background, and then say a black and white stripe with brights on top of it. That would be, see, I could see what I'm doing and I still did it. That would be a much busier kind of design, but might be an interesting thing to try. And it sort of also reminds me of, I don't know, y'all are probably too young for this, but they used to have talent on, I don't know, Ed Sullivan or wherever, that were spinning plates on the top of poles, and they'd have a bunch of them, you know, they've got so many plates spinning in the air. And this sort of reminds me of that. So, and it, you know, it's just kind of goofy wonky, and they're spinning these. Oh, you know what? I prepared this by a strip ahead of time because I knew I was going to want to try it, and you don't need to watch me do that. So what if we did this with the red and pink and black and white that we used for the Alice, and it becomes the Mad Platter? Okay, that could be fun. That could work. I think I still have some. We'll have to try that. You see, that's the reason I didn't finish the Alice quilt, is because I've still got things happening. Now, as we talked about with the mishmash quilts last week, the fact that I'm doing these trials, experimentations, explorations in the same sort of themes, so the black and white stripes, black and white print, and brights, means that it will be easier to pull these all together into a quilt for those pieces that I decide aren't going to be their own thing. And they will have some unity just because of the fabrics that I'm using. So this is where we're going to start. I'm going to need I'm going to do white fabric in the background. And then I also will want some, I think, fusible web, and definitely some stabilizer for the back. I'm just thinking about the fusible web. I could, of course, use fusible web for these strips as well as these, or I could turn the edges under. I'm kind of inclined to do that, I think. And here's why, I think. If I am doing noticeable, well, I guess it depends on how I stitch these down. If I have turned under edges, then I can stitch this with invisible thread, which of course I just took off my machine, and just have it be basically invisible, because I can do a really narrow zigzag stitch here, because I don't have to worry about stopping the fraying. It just needs to hold it down. Then you wouldn't see that, and the stitching around here would sort of take precedent. The eye would focus on that more, which is what I would want. So that's my inclination. If we have time, I might try it the other way and see how it goes. We'll see. So I am off to, I do have some black and white prints here. As I said, I've got some black and white prints. Let me zoom out. Let me say that again. I have some black and white prints, black and white stripe. I have some brights here, both prints and solids. Pardon the rattle. I have some strips here as well. So I am off to get other stuff I'll need, and then we'll come back and give it a go. I am back with a variety of stuff. This is neither here nor there, but I just found this in my crumb box, and wouldn't that make a fun something somewhere? All right, easily distracted. That is me. So I have some fusible backed papers here. Yikes, fabric here of different prints, solids. I got a couple black and whites, some brights. So those will be ready to cut into the plates or platters. This is kind of like ring toss, isn't it? So I have some ready for that. And then I also have some strips ready. I found another wider wide strip that I added to the collection. It's a little bit wider, it might be too wide, I don't know. Then I found a strip with vertical stripes. Don't know how that would work, but it was there, so I did it. Here is a bright purple strip, and this is what I had left when I sliced that strip in order to get 1 inches to put through the bias tape maker. So I thought if we decide we want to try a raw edged strip, then that would be a possibility. And even the straight edge strips here, the straight of grain, I ran through the bias tape maker just because it's easier and it's more even than if I'm trying to fold the edges over manually. So I think we're ready to go, and I'm going to make this kind of a sampler piece, mishmash of a sort. So I have a plenty big piece of white, I think, so that I can be ready to lay down some strips. And then I'm going to need to cut some of the plates or the rings. Now, I'm going to go ahead and cut them as ovals. Maybe free form, maybe not. You've seen how I cut circles. Now, if I'm trying to cut something that's an oval, I probably won't be able to, and I'll end up with a circle. But or I may draw them ahead of time on the paper side of the web and cut them out. That's probably what I'll do. It's going to be less waste in the long run. Then when I go to put them onto the strip, I'm going to need to pay attention to what part of it is going behind the strip and what is coming forward. And then I'm going to think about what I want to do about that strip and the pieces that go under the strip, as well as actually the ones that go over the strip. So there are a couple of considerations I might want to make there. And of course, this is a small detail, and it may or may not matter in the design, but I like to think about those details just because it might matter. So in this case, I have all of the rings showing forward here. So the front part of the ring is on top in all of these cases. In this case, it's on top, but it's on top. So the front is on the top of the oval rather than the bottom down here. I could mix and match those. I'm not sure where I'm going with that, if anywhere. And it may not matter so much in this pencil drawing, but when I start getting these bright fabrics going, it might make a visual difference. So I am going to cut a few ovals of different sizes, but generally pretty good sized. I don't want them to get lost in the width and length of the string. What are we going to call that? String. We'll call that the string and the ring. So I'll cut some ovals and be back. Actually, I'll cut rings. I have some rings. So there's a red one, which I think just goes splendidly with that, don't you think? One thing I discovered, and it's really odd, I don't know if that's true of anyone else, I find it easier to cut a good oval if I'm on the paper side instead of the fabric side. That makes no sense to me. It's not like I can't see the fabric through it, and it's not like that's any different side. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's less distracting if I don't have the print. I don't know. Anyway, then there's a wilder print. Here is a black and white. And I started off doing these relatively centered and kind of even rings, and then I thought, well, why am I doing that? So this one is offset a bit. And then I have this one, which is a much narrower ring, and that one offset to the side quite a bit. And then I thought something popped into my head with a triangle here instead of the oval in the center. Don't know where it came from, but I think I'm going to like it. Which means, of course, these shapes don't have to be rings either. They could be triangles or whatever. And then I thought, well, we could have just a rectangle instead of a circle in the middle. And if that's the case, then why not have two, and then the string winds through. I don't know. Things to try, things to look at. May like some of them, may not like others, but we're here about experimenting. And I fear that we will come up with many more things that we could do, and it will be an endless exploration, which is, you know, not necessarily a terrible thing, right? So now there are some things I'm going to have to be thinking about. All right, I know that I want this red one on the stripe just because, you know, and they can be spinning every which way. At some point, I'm probably going to have one that falls off the edge, aren't I? That is no longer spinning. And then how about this one? I know you can't see it yet, but it will be on screen in a moment. And for my purposes, because I like things a little wonky, I don't want to have them all off axis in the same direction. So there we go. Let me actually move that over a bit. And this one I think is probably going to want just the black and white ones on it. And this one gets woven in. The weaver in me never quits, I guess. Not that I'm that accomplished weaver, but sometimes I think I have a weaver's mindset. Okay, I think that in this case, at least, this could stand to be wider. Don't you think? Particularly because this piece is so large. And of course, the string would not have to be an even width. All right, and then let's see how things look. Here's one that is, pardon my elbow in your face here. The triangle, and then the wilder print here. So there's our options that we're looking at the moment. So this is the point where I have to decide. This one is not decided for me, because I could weave it the other way where it comes over and then under this and over. I don't think that would show any more of the purple than this, at least not enough to make it visually different. All right, so I don't necessarily like these all together, but I do like them. I'm most inclined at the moment to like this one, but I might want this brighter and wider. This one's kind of fun. I actually kind of like the straight stripe too. All right, I think what I'm going to do is actually divide this background into 3 pieces so that I'll have 3 things that don't necessarily end up being together. I may have to go get another piece of fabric if I don't have enough room here, but that's not a problem. So that's what I'm going to do next, is make each of these a separate block. All right, they're in 3 separate pieces now. And look what I found. We didn't do a horizontal stripe yet. I wanted something a little brighter and a little wider here. So let's try this yellow stripe. Love purple, but let's try the yellow stripe. And this time I'll have it go this way. Oh yeah, I like that better. I think though I want the narrow on top. I don't know why. I may be wrong, but I think I do. All right, that emphasizes it more somehow. I don't know. I'm just rambling now. Okay, so I like that one. These do not have to be straight up and down either, of course. So many options. So many options. And one could just play around with those forever. I kind of like it a little straighter. Doesn't have to be straight up and down, but a little straighter. Yeah, I think that will be good. So that, I think we're in pretty good shape. Now, a couple of things to take into consideration. Will this shadow through here? And do I care? So to reduce bulk, I could cut out that little strip that's hidden under there. I fear that would do some raveling and make things look uneven. This one, because of the width that I cut the strip before I send it through the bias tape maker, I have a little space here, a line that is just a single layer of fabric. So that's going to show through here. This is going to show through here because of that. It's another nice reason to have these turned under, isn't it? So if this is going to bother me, then what I'm going to do is just cut out that little strip that is shadowing through there. Then I need to make a decision about what's underneath here. Otherwise, is it going to be too much bulk or is it going to be okay? I think it's going to be okay. I had at first thought that I was going to have to do a lot of splicing and redoing here if this was going to shadow through, but it looks like as long as I've got the edges turned under, so I actually have 2 layers of fabric there, that it's not going to be much of a problem, except in this instance where they aren't meeting on the back. So I think that one will be ready to go once I trim that out. Let me give that a try and we'll see what happens. Actually, I don't think it made an appreciable difference, but you all were probably shouting out, "But Karen, why not put a little bit of," this is a low loft, a thin cotton batting. This is white and natural. Cut a thin strip, put it under there. It gives it some dimension, and it also will prevent that shadowing through. I like it. Probably the smartest thing would be to cut a narrow enough strip that I can slide it underneath that instead of trying to wrangle it. Let me think about it. I could glue baste that actually, so that I don't have to try to tuck it in there and try and make it even that way. Alrighty, folks, that's what I'm going to do on this one. And then I think I'll be ready to come back and fuse it. One way I could do this actually is to have this slot, no, never mind. I could slice this so that I can, honestly, Karen, use your words, so that I can stitch this down first and then have this go over the top, and then I don't have to do that whole intersection thing. But if that's stitched down, then I'm going to have this extra edge here, and, you know, I don't know that I want that. So I'm not going to overcomplicate my life, is what I think I'm saying. All right, so I am going to pad this with a little bit of cotton batting, and then I'm going to fuse those pieces down and they'll be ready to stitch. The strip is 5/8 inch wide, so I cut a batting strip that is 1/2 inch wide, and I'm going to use glue based from, I think this is Roxanne's, yes, from Roxanne's. It has a nice pointy tip, that I can be precise and put on just a little bit to glue baste it. If you use temporary basting spray, you could also do that, I guess, although that's a lot of stuff floating around in the air for just a very narrow strip here. So I will do that. You could also put a like a fusible interfacing, cut a strip and fuse that on the back would also work. That would help with masking the shadow through, but this gives it a little bit of extra dimension that I think I want. All right, I have fused down these pieces. This of course doesn't have any fusible on it. You could run a strip of double-sided fusible if you wish to do that. It's held in place somewhat by these being fused down, but I also did just very small dots of glue just to hold it in place while I stitch it. I'm not really needing it to be perfectly straight, but it will give me one less thing that I have to be watching as I'm stitching if I don't have to worry about it moving around too much. So that is going to be ready to stitch. Let me, I'm thinking this I want to do with invisible. Do I? You know, I think I'm going to, this is the one I think that's most likely to be something I will use elsewhere or build on. So I want to try out a couple of the stitching things on the other pieces. Not that I dislike those, but this one I'm pretty sure is going somewhere else. So I'm going to hold off until I see what it looks like on other pieces. So let's do, I just dumped them all. We're going to do one that has two pieces off. All right, now this one is going to shadow through here. So I need to decide if that's all right with me. I can, of course, pad this as well, which might be kind of an interesting design element because that will give that dimension. So I could cut a bit of batting behind that. In fact, I might do that. The other thing here that is giving me pause is that these are much the same size. And I'm not sure that I like that. I love this triangle bit. And I have run this underneath that part so it doesn't hide that triangle point there. That makes it obvious. But I think this needs to be larger, not smaller. And this could certainly be used in another piece, but I think this needs to be larger. So let me see if I have another one already cut. So for example, I have this pink one, which I think is going to be better. And again, it's going to shadow through, but that's better. There's more interest to it because it's a different size. So I've got a color difference, a different size. These are roughly the same shape, they're ovals, but I have different centers here. So that's a little bit more interest to the eye, but I think it really needed to have a larger size one here. So that one's better. So do I want to try on this one to pad it with some batting? I think at least one of these pieces I do, maybe both. You know, we'll give it a try. And then on this one, I'm going to do, I think, a white thread stitching on this side. I've got a black on the edge, that black stripe, and then invisible over here. And not sure, might do decorative on those. But first of all, I am going to pad these with batting. And again, in this case, because I've got fusible there, actually don't need to use glue, but I would want to leave enough of a border here that is not padded, because I want that to fuse down. I want those edges to be fused. I guess in some ways it doesn't matter because they're already fused to the fuse. My main purpose for that is to keep it from raveling rather than placement on here. So as long as it has some fuse and I can glue baste it or whatever, it would be all right if I did not have too much of a border there. Sorry, I'm just going through my thought process, and I'm sorry to make you be privy to what my brain goes through all the time. All right, I'm going to pad these then, and then probably glue baste them somehow and come back. I used this piece as a template to cut the batting, and now I'm going to, this is Steam Machine 2, so it's sticky, won't be sticky much longer. And then I'm going to trim just a little bit off all of these edges so that the batting isn't peeking out. So this one is ready to stitch. I have it glue basted down so it's not going to go anywhere. And again, this is not padded, but in this case, the rings are padded. And then this one, I almost forgot that this is a bias strip. And I wanted to try out a strip that winds, that curves, winds around a bit. So it's a little much there. And then this one, I decided to use this wider one at the bottom just to kind of visually give it some ground. And there isn't a lot of difference in size here, but I think there's enough with this piece being long and shorter, I guess, that I think it'll be all right. And I like having this tilted pretty sharply. And then I will glue baste the curve into this and fuse it, and that one will be ready for stitching options. I like this much better with the curve. It will be interesting to see if I were to put curves in some of these others, the other two, how I would feel. They are not on the bias, so we can't tell, but this stripe, it definitely wants to be on the curve, doesn't it? Isn't that fun? And wouldn't that look very Alice-y if I put those fabrics in there? In fact, I maybe almost ought to do that so that I have this for the Alice quilt. All right, I did swap it out for the Alice colors. I did do something backwards though. I intended to have pink in this shape in the center, but that's all right. Here we are. This was shadowing through a lot through this light pink, so I ended up snipping out a strip of this backside string. There's a little bit of black shadowing through, but the stitching should mask that, so I'm not worried about it. I do like it, and I really do like that curve on the background string. And then this piece, there is nothing here that is padded. All I did here that was a little different is to cut out that strip there. And here we did not pad the strip, but we did pad the ring. And in this one, we padded the strip, but not the rings. I sort of had a favorite going into this, but now I'm not sure because I really kind of like them all for different reasons. So here we have it, and I think this is all I'm going to do for this week. It's past lunchtime and I'm hungry. just for display purposes. Let's shift those so that we don't have the pinks on the same side. Always the design eye is working. And next week then we will go forward with some stitching. We have so many options, people, so many options. And I'm afraid if I go any further, I'll think of more and we'll be here all week and no one will be happy with that. So that is it for this week. Next week's stitching. I am almost finished with the glyphs quilt. I have 2 seams left and they are doozies. I did end up changing on one side. There was not, and the color balance was not right. So I ended up swapping out a couple of background pieces for cinnamon for back. I don't know, whichever. It's cinnamon now. And that balances it out much better. I had showed it to my brother and sister in a photo, and my brother said, "Great. How many blocks like this are there in the quilt?" No, you're going to give me nightmares. Although, so I will be sitting on it for a while anyway. I'm still not pushing my shoulder too much, so it won't be quilted in any case. Next week, stitching. In the meantime, be well, be safe, be happy, be quilting. Peace out.